Fuck it, I straight up gang. I straight up gang. I straight up gang. I straight up gang. Fuck it.
Now, in my last video, I promised to do a full read-through of the Maroon Treaty that they so proudly beat the Jamaican people over the head with every time we ask any questions about them. So because I don't think anyone has gone through them with a fine-tooth comb, let me go through them with you and try to make heads or tails of the document. Now, there are 15 parts of this treaty, and I'm going to try go through them as fast as possible without taking up too much time. Now, before I get into this, I just want to remind you that up to when this treaty was established, the Maroons were actually beating the British, and this is the treaty that the Maroons agreed to. Now, I know I have my biases, but you make up your own mind whether this treaty made sense for the side that was actually winning the war. Now, we come on to the first section of the treaty. First, that all hostilities shall cease on both sides forever. Now, this one is pretty self-explanatory, meaning all fighting between them and the Maroons shall come to an end. Number 2, that the said Captain Kodja and the rest of his captains, adherents, and men shall forever hereafter in a perfect state of freedom and liberty, excepted those who have been taken by them or fled to them within 2 years last past, if such are willing to return to their said masters and owners with full pardon and indemnity from their said masters or owners for what is past, provided always that if they are not willing to return, they shall remain in subjugation to Captain Kodjo and in friendship with us according to the form and tenor of this treaty. Now, this one is a tricky statement that people like current Chief Richard Curry like to use to deceive the regular Jamaican. Now, the first part of the second section is again self-explanatory. Captain Kodjo and his people shall live in a state of perfect freedom and liberty, which was a lie, by the way, because not 50 years later the same British mash up Kodjo descendants and him people and ship them off to another country. That's not something that happened to free people, but whatever, may I get sidetracked. Now, this is where the tricks start. It goes on to say, excepting those who have been taken in by them or fled to them within 2 years last past, if such are willing to return to their masters with full pardon. What this part is saying is that within the 12 years that the war lasted, and you have escaped here join the Maroons, except for those that escaped within the past 2 years, everybody is free to make their own decision as to what them are gonna do. Return to the plantations with full pardons from them masters, so no whipping, etc., or them stay with Kodjo and get ruled by him. But the very important part where the Maroons love gloss over, the ones who escaped within the past 2 years have to go back no matter what. Now, this part was very important to the British, and you may ask yourself, why? Why was it so important to the British? Well, within the last 2 years is where a majority of the slaves that joined the Maroons escaped. See, it was in those years that the Maroons them mostly start raid plantation and start take slaves off the plantation for join them and fight. So what this treaty basically say is all them people they have to go back into slavery after them help the Maroons beat the British. Everybody else can come or stay if them want. So again, Richard Curry need to stop tell people lie and come straight to the Jamaican people. Now, if we look on the price for a male slave at the time, this graph that you're looking at is a census from the Worthy Park estate back during the time of the First Maroon War. The price of a male was roughly 50 British pounds. So if we go back to a trusty currency converter, we see the value of one healthy male slave at the time of the treaty was around 6,000 pounds converted into today's money, right? Which is roughly around 1.3 million Jamaican dollars in today's figure. So the British were never going to let the potential millions of dollars in slave labor go for free. So again, another fiction that the Maroons love to spin. Moving on, section 3, that they shall enjoy and possess for themselves and posterity forever all the lands situate and lying between Trelawney Town and the cockpits to the amount of 1,500 acres bearing northwest from the said Trelawney Town. Again, I touched on this on the last video. The Maroons literally agreed to put themselves in a reservation. Now, this was an agreement with the Maroons and the British. This is not a treaty with the Jamaican government as it exists now and the Maroons. When Jamaica became independent, we as a nation decided to choose for ourselves the direction that we take the country in both foreign and domestic policy. The Jamaican government is not obligated to fulfill or keep up any deal made with the British, as the British no longer rule Jamaica. If the British did so eager for the Maroons to keep them so-called independent status in the new Jamaica, they would have ratified it in their terms of independence. This is something that they have done before in Palestine, where they ratified the creation of a separate Jewish state. So what happened in the cockpit country was nowhere near what happened in Palestine, in Jamaica. The British just allowed them to live in the cockpit country till they, the British, felt like it. Number 4, that they shall have liberty to plant the said lands with coffee, cocoa, ginger, tobacco, and cotton, and to breed cattle, hogs, goats, or any other flock, and dispose of the produce or increase of the said commodities to the inhabitants of the island, provided always that when they bring the said commodities to market, they shall apply fees to customs or any other magistrate of the respective parishes where they expose their goods to sale for a license to vend the same. So this is saying they can plant whatever they want in them reservation, but it makes it clear that any of them sell to anybody outside of the cockpit, them have to pay tax, whatever that may be, and get licensed to sell. You should notice a pattern at this point. Every time they give the Maroons something sweet that would already be entitled to them as quote-unquote free people, a little catch is tacked on. Number 5, that Captain Cudjoe and all the captain's adherents and people now in subjection to him shall all live together within the bounds of Trelawney town, and that they have liberty to hunt where they shall think fit, except within 3 miles any settlement, kraal, or pen, provided always that in case the hunters of Captain Cudjoe and those of other settlements meet, then the hog shall be equally divided between both parties. So again, it's reinforcing the point that they are to live within the bounds of the reservation. Number 6, that the said Captain Cudjoe and his successors do use their best endeavors to take, kill, suppress, or destroy, either by themselves or jointly, with any other number of men commanded on that service by His Excellency the Governor or Commander-in-Chief for the time being, all rebels wheresoever they be, throughout this island, unless they submit to the same terms of accommodation granted to Captain Cudjoe and his successors. So this is a part of the treaty which Chief Curry Love mixed with Section 2, saying that the Maroons were obligated to turn over criminals only to the British Crown. This section specifically speaks to anybody that would rebel against the British and start hostilities like Paul Bogle and Taki, etc. As I said in the last video, Jamaica was in constant rebellion over the years. So the British wanted allies they could use to crush any rebels that would more than likely run and stage them rebellions from the hills. If you have someone on your side that know the bush and the mountains better than escaped slaves staging a rebellion, the British would win every time, which in reality is what happened. Number 7, that in the case this island be invaded by any foreign enemy, the said Captain Cudjoe and his successors, hereinafter named, are to be appointed, shall then, upon notice given, immediately repair to any place the governor for the time being shall appoint, in order to repel the said invaders with his or their utmost force, and to submit to the orders of the commander-in-chief on that occasion. Meaning, if Jamaica ever became invaded, the Maroons wouldn't be able to fight against the threat independently, but would come under the direct command of the British once they got called up. Number 8, that if any white man shall do any manner of injury to Captain Cudjoe, his successors, or any of his or their people, they shall apply to any commanding officer or magistrate in the neighborhood for justice. And in case Captain Cudjoe or any of his people shall do any injury to any whiter person, he shall submit himself or deliver up such offenders to justice. So basically, if a white man do something to a Maroon, they could apply for justice in a British court. And in case a Maroon did harm to a white man, he would have to submit himself to a British court. Now this is interesting because I thought, as Curry said, they were free, equal, independent nations. with them own laws, etc. Yet a white man could never be judged or punished in a Maroon court. It's just so funny that this is what equality looks like. Number 9, that if any Negro shall hereafter run away from their masters or owners, and shall fall into Captain Cudjoe's hands, they shall immediately be sent back to the chief magistrate of the next parish where they are taken, and these that bring them are to be satisfied for their trouble, as the legislature shall appoint. The assembly granted a premium of 30 shillings for each fugitive slave returned to his owner by the Maroons, besides expenses. So I explained this one in the last video, but just a summary, all it's saying is that the Maroons are to return all runaway slaves, not who them feel like from henceforth, and as a reward they were to be paid. Let me repeat that, to be paid. Number 10, that all Negroes taken since the raising of this party by Captain Cudjoe's people shall immediately be returned, just restating of the point that all Negroes, not some, are to be returned to the British. Number 11, that Captain Cudjoe and his successor shall wait, Excellency, or the Commander-in-Chief for the time being, every year, if thereunto required. Now, this one have a double meaning, you know. So let me explain what the common accepted form of it is. Now, some said this is referring to the fact that the Maroons always have to be at the attention or wait and contact from the British whenever they call on the Maroons. Now, others have said that the wait is very important in that sentence, as in the Maroons have to serve the British, wait on them. It'll sound like a wait staff then. So you be the judge how you decide you think it means. Number 12, that Captain Cudjoe during his life and the captain succeeding him shall have full power to inflict any punishment they think proper for crimes committed by their men among themselves, death only excepted, in which case if the captain thinks they deserve death, he shall be obliged to bring them before any justice of the peace, who shall order proceedings on their trial equal to those of other free Negroes. Again, this is one of them that shows that the Maroons weren't a free and equal and independent people, especially in the eyes of the British. So this one is saying that even if among themselves another Maroon do something to another Maroon and him deserve death, like for instance if one Maroon murder another Maroon and him guilty and even confess to the murder, the Maroons on them own couldn't condemn him to death. They would have to go to and try him in a British court. Ridiculous. About 3. Number 13, that Captain Cudjoe with his people shall cut, clear, and keep open large and convenient roads from Trelawney Town to Westmoreland and St. James, possible to St. Elizabeth's. The British all put the Maroons to work like slave. Man, them give them road work for free. Man, them say build a road from Trelawney to St. James to Westmoreland and if possible St. Elizabeth. As I said before, it come in like the British win the war. Who me could have beat in a war and after peace treaty is signed, them a come tell me for build a clean road. Number 14, 2 white men to be nominated by His Excellency or the Commander-in-Chief for the time being shall constantly live and reside with Captain Cudjoe and his successors in order to maintain a friendly correspondence with the inhabitants of this island. The Maroons usually use this one to say that they had ambassadors, but in reality, these 2 white men were put in the Maroon villages to monitor them and report all their doings back to the British. Later on, they even went on to install a commander on the Maroons village that dictated how and when the Maroons went and come. Number 15, that Captain Cudjoe shall during his life be chief commander in Trelawney Town. After his decease, the command to devolve on his brother, Captain Upcampong, and in case of his decease, and his next brother Captain Johnny, and failing him, Captain Coffee shall succeed, who is to be succeeded by Captain Quaco, and after all their demises, the governor or commander-in-chief for the time being shall appoint from time to time whom he thinks fit for that command. Now this one is the British giving themselves permission to dictate who the chief of the Maroons would be for time and forever. So again, me just have a question that hopefully one day a Maroon can answer for me. How exactly on win the war again? Because this treaty from start to finish was in favor of the British. The treaty didn't grant the Maroons a nation. All it did was allow the Maroons to live in British territory while doing work for free. You know another name for that? Slavery or indentured servitude.